which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, everybody. First on the agenda is a moment of silence. For a second. Okay, we're going to go to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that you want to pull out of the consent agenda?
I would imagine we will probably have quite a bit more as we move into January and February for school salary supplements and contract payments. We start spring sports, baseball, softball, track, boys soccer, all that starts being able to have competitions in February, so we'll probably have some more, but it's going to be light this month.
No visitors tonight? So first up,
Yep.
Ms. Owen?
So first, we're on number 8. We have the 23 through 28 Rutherford County School Strategic Plan, tab 2. So this is something that is one good business practice for our school district to have, but also it is a requirement for the state of Tennessee, and we have until January 13th to have this updated and uploaded. This is online as well, so we're not going to go through it just piece by piece, but there's a couple things I did want to go over. Our board has been working on this since September, really, since our board was established. We had a retreat in October to where we established our mission, vision, and objectives or goals at that point. Then we worked on the board sets, goals, mission, vision, and then the staff here in our schools are then kind of charged with making those goals become reality with action steps. So you will see it's very simple, and I appreciate, James, the formatting work that you did on this. So you'll see that we have our mission, vision, and objectives. This matches what the board approved in, I believe, November from our October board meeting. And then I did change the wording of objective goal just so it helped be able to follow what some of the requirement was from TDOE of what they have goals versus objectives. Still means the exact same thing. But then you'll see the objective, which is the big overarching thing at the top. So if I'm just on the second actual page, it says objective, provide early interventions that address student needs and supports the whole child. That's our objective. And then we have multiple goals underneath that. One of those being provide early interventions, support the whole child, and then you'll see action steps for each one. They continually go on. A couple that I will highlight, of course, our main objective is to make sure that our students are learning at the levels they need to and that we're making sure that they are performing at that level. So that's where you're going to see the biggest impact is focused around students, and then who provides that to our students or our staff. So you'll see a lot of attention also to retention of our employees, recruitment of our employees, and then last, we know that growth is a huge challenge for us as a district, and so that's where that fifth really objective comes in, is making sure that we're planning proactively for the future. So happy to discuss any of these if you have any comments between now and then. I'm sure we probably will have a couple action steps that we will add as time goes on, and if needed, we can just come back and add those as modified.
Can I ask, is there information on the Resilient School Grant as far as requirements that go along with that and more specifics on what that is?
Yeah.
And who would I get with, I guess, to kind of get more details on that?
So Dr. Golian would be the first contact. Him or Amy Baltimore, either one of those two. It goes through our federal programs, even though it's a state grant. But I can have that for you on Thursday as well.
Yeah, I'd really like to. I did look it up.
It was a quick release from the State Department, if I believe. Dr. Chastain, do you remember any of it? It was September, October.
I thought it was August or September at the earliest, and Amy moved on it really quickly.
Yeah, but I'll have all that for
And
you.
the training has been well received by our admin, I will say that.
Yep, I'll have it for you Thursday.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Number 9.
All right, number 9, Federal Programs, tab 3. So I will read the blurb and then give you a little background as well. So contract with Justice Educational Consulting, LLC. The Curriculum Instruction Department is recommending a contract with Justice Educational Consulting, LLC. The contract would be with consultant Dr. Lisa Justice. Former principal of Blackman High School, Dr. Justice will be working alongside administration and leadership teams within Rutherford County Schools, providing consultation and mentorship. This contracted service will be paid out at a rate of $75 per hour for no more than 300 hours during the spring semester of the 22-23 school year. The whole kind of purpose and how this came along, Dr. Justice retired from us last year as a successful principal of Blackman High School. Blackman High School, and really the way that the state accountability system is set up now, it's not necessarily advantageous for large districts. The more diverse you are under the state accountability system, the more chances you have to not necessarily show success. And so for our schools, if you have a certain number of students in a subgroup, then you automatically count and have to report for that subgroup, whether it is Hispanic, whether it is special education. Multiple schools in multiple districts across the state don't have a student count of 10 or 40 in those individual subgroups, so they aren't held accountable for those subgroups. We are so large, we are held accountable in every one of our schools for all of our subgroups. And so that lends more things that can not go the way we want them to do. We had 3 or 4 high schools back in the 2019 school year that were on this exact same list for targeted school assistance and assisted targeted school and improvement, and Blackman High School is one of those. I was over curriculum instruction at that time, so I worked, and Dr. Justice worked with Mark and our special education coordinator to really target where are our students, how can we get them to perform, and where can we make quick gains, and they were off of that list very quickly and made a ton of success. Dr. Justice has also been has led a very well-performing school for us as a county. And so our vision is the state released TSI and ATSI. Those are your schools that with a subgroup perform in the bottom 5%. That's not our expectation in this county. That's something that we don't need to have in this county, regardless of what those schools are. So we have Laverne High School, Rock Springs Elementary School, Riverdale High School, Blackman Elementary, and Smyrna Middle School are our 5 schools. We very well may use, if we have, for example, 2 new principals who started, Jason Eaton at Smyrna Primary, and then Jennifer Smith at Smyrna West. So we could utilize Dr. Justice's leadership in those avenues as well if they're saying, hey, I just need somebody to talk to that's been in the system. But that's the whole avenue and background for what Dr. Justice would work with our schools for. Yeah, so
Subject or a
it'd be a subgroup, so it'd be a student. So most of our subgroups that we struggle with is special education, so students with disabilities. So that is what Blackman High School was. Do you know the designations right at the top of your head? Which school is which?
I can look it up. I had it earlier. I know we have several schools that have that as one of their categories. Laverne is one of them. Rock Springs.
Elementary School.
And then the others were different subgroups, like maybe your EL students, Hispanic students, different.
I was wondering that just because like Laverne, I know that
Yep.
whole area has a very high ESL population. I didn't know if that
Smyrna Middle, I think, was the only one that was the Hispanic or EL population. They're not one and the same, but I believe that was.
And what year was it that Laverne High School missed it by 1/10 of a point because of a subcategory being like a
It would
level
have been
5
last year.
school?
It would have been last year.
I couldn't remember what year it was.
And so as crazy as that is, that's the accountability system that we have to play. There's a 120-something page accountability protocol that the state releases, and that's something that we do as a business. We follow that accountability protocol to make sure that we are performing the way that we need to perform. And then Blackman Elementary School, this is just to give you an example of it's not always the subgroups you think that may historically underperform. Blackman Elementary Schools with their Asian subgroup. So they have enough to where there's not a lot of Asian subgroups that calculate to meet that 30 in count across the state, and they had one that did. So when you hear bottom 5%, it doesn't necessarily mean that the school bottomed out in any one area. It may just mean comparatively there weren't a whole lot of schools, like for that example, to choose from.
And also, I probably wasn't the only one who went to Dr. Justice and said, please stay. So I get the grandbabies and the family situation, but I'm thrilled that she's going to be working with us and is kind of staying with us. And for those who don't know, Dr. Justice and her crew, and I can't even begin to name who worked with her, developed Blackman Collegiate Academy, which is very successful and well sought after. And I'm glad we're going to have her back with us.
I would like to also voice my pleasure at the family.
I'll kind of tell you, our thought process on all of it was, most places go out and they consult with a company from out of the state or out of the area. We have a principal in the county who was literally on this exact same trajectory a couple of years ago and very quickly was able to show success. So why not invest in somebody that we know what they're doing, and two, has a reputation in our district.
I think we lose so much when they completely leave the system. There's a lot of
So I
knowledge.
don't think she retired. Well, she did retire, but she's working with the system now, so it's find a way to get back in there. So I think that's great. I had the pleasure of meeting her during my time when I was campaigning, and my mic is really loud. Huh?
They all are tonight.
They are tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're making sure we're heard. 'cause they
I
get
guess
a
so.
lot of-
Yes, I was like, whoa, that's really loud. And I already have a loud voice as it is. It carries. No, but I think I think that's awesome that she's decided to come to the county, and she does have a record of success. You had mentioned, Ms. Sharp, about the creation of the academy, which is very, very impressive. I had a conversation with her about it, and the whole program itself is very good. So awesome. Yay.
Did you have something you wanted to add? Oh, I thought you were looking something up. Okay. Okay, okay, all right, great. So number
When did she start? I'm so sorry. When will she start when would this program be implemented?
As soon as the board approves it.
Oh, okay, and it's gonna run through this school
school
year,
year,
and then
and then
the
we'll-
following school year?
Just this school year, and then we'll
Just
see
this
how
school year.
what options we have from there.
Oh, okay, and then if there's anything
Mhm.
after that, well, then we'll go back and revisit and
Yep.
see. Okay, perfect, okay, great, thanks.
number 10.
All right, number 10, so legal tab 4, number 1, out-of-county transfer student number 1. Board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. This student was remanded to alternative school for making a threat. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admission of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is to admit and place in the alternative school setting. You will see that, this student, if you will look at the dates, they would have been recommended to go back to their current placement in current county within the next week. And so my recommendation is to place the student in our alternative setting, because if we just say, yes, they're admitted, then they would technically go to our alternative school for 1 day and then be eligible to leave. And that's not necessarily what's best in most situations. So this would start the student out at our alternative school, and they'd have to follow through our program.
Any questions?
All right, so the next one should be number 2, annual policy review. So this is getting us on track. So part of this year has been getting us back organized in some things. The way that policies used to work was that the board would say, two things. One, we need to review all of our policies annually as part of a board of distinction, and that's just good practice. So we want to get into a habit of doing that on a regular basis. We just reviewed this section 3, but what we're going to be doing moving forward is the board will have all of section 3 brought before them at a board meeting, and then the board will have that opportunity then to say, hey, I would like this to be reviewed at policy. And that way it already is being requested by board members of the policy review committee. Instead of vice versa. Right now, it's like the policy review committee looks at it and then decides and goes through to get it to the board. This starts at the board level first. And then if there are any changes that you request to make, a couple of these, I will give you an example I already know, is 3.2041 pandemic epidemic face covering mask requirement. We talked about this in the November 4th, I believe, policy committee meeting, to where we said this is one that probably needs to be scrapped at this point. This is putting it right back into that process to say, all right, now it's going officially to the policy committee from the board, and that'll be the way that it goes from this point forward. When we get into our next policy review committee, the board will see section 4. Is that the one we're doing next? Section 4. So the board will see it first. Any policies, of course, you can put any, it doesn't have to just be section 4, but if the board has anything on section 4, you'll have several weeks to review that to say, here are the ones that we would like to see go to policy, instead of the opposite direction. And that'll be the way we work kind of this point forward.
So we're going to get it a little bit ahead of time.
Yes. We're doing a policy meeting January 31st, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So these are the ones that review between now and January 31st to see if there's any changes. You are probably pretty familiar with them because we just made some changes to them.
Number 11.
All right, number 11, Facilities and Construction, tab 5, Rockville Elementary sign request. Principal Dana Nichols is requested to install a new digital sign at the cost to be split between the school and the building program. This is consistent with previous requests for other projects to share costs for a new sign. The cost for the sign will not exceed $25,000 and will be funded from existing building program project savings. That is very consistent with what we've been doing in opening Rocky Fork. That was something that we looked at doing. Otherwise, a school gets an addition, a new something to the school, and then you end up paying just as much money with an additional sign to go with one that's 10 or 15 years old instead of a digital sign.
Any questions? Number 2.
All right, number 2, CMTA ESPC updated presentation. So a funding source to provide LED lighting to all school campuses and utilize savings to fund as many HVAC projects as possible. We have new board members to follow up from the original presentation from July 20th, 2021. This will be good information for me as well. I wasn't in this capacity, and many of you weren't as well, so it's good for us to have this presentation. There's no action required. It's just as information as an option for us to see. And Trey, I'll kind of turn it over to you.
Good evening. I'm just coming over here momentarily because the gentlemen behind me are going to be speaking from here, not from my mic, so I thought I'd come here first. Quickly, just how we got here. 2018, 2019, I took over this position, and one of the first things we did was begin to analyze our facilities to see where we were. We created the first 177 fund, about $25 million, I think. We just kind of scratched the surface, and we've been adding to and reviewing that list. In front of you tonight, you have the current, what is approved for this calendar year that we are currently operating in, 177 fund. What's in green and yellow is the projects that we're working on. I've added a couple of different highlights because I wanted to bring your attention to the major HVAC, which is on page 1, and major roofing, which is on page 2. Major roofing, last year's anticipated 5-year projection was $125,931,000 in HVAC. In major roofing, we had $26,200,000 just in those 2 line items. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, those numbers are going to go up 40% at a minimum. You will also see additional projects added this coming year. I've begun, that's one of the first, I'm up first, I'm one of the first budgets that we're going to look at this year is 177. So I say all that to say this. We looked at funding this through the county originally, like a building program project, asked for a certain amount of dollars to, and then oversee them in-house like we do now with all of these projects and our construction projects, and we didn't get very far. So, and our list continued to grow. We are staring at...
Because to do it that way, Trey, we'd have to go to the bond market for repairs, correct?
That's correct. So we would, it would become like a regular project, a building program project, and we tell them we need $50 million. They go borrow the money, and it's over 20 years, but it's treated just like a building program project would be. Now, the great thing about that was, at that time, the interest rate was way low, and we were a primo county, so we would have basically been borrowing money at 0.0-something%. We all know what's happened in the last 6 to 9 months with the interest rate. That is no longer there. So we continue to look for additional revenue streams. Williamson County, Murray County, Wilson County, some of the counties around us have been going through this process over the last 5 to 10 years utilizing this method. And the short version is We're going to capture energy dollars through the installation of LED lighting throughout our entire county. If we were to replace at last year's dollars, Jason and them have got some updated numbers, but we didn't want to go completely through the huge presentation, just want to give you an update tonight. We could save somewhere between $3 and $3.5 million a year just through changing out all of our lights to LED lighting. We would basically borrow from the bank now instead of through the county, which these gentlemen would go out and solicit loans through the EESI program through the state, like we would do, but they can package it, get their hands on all of the money up front, and we do this over a couple of years. But basically, we would fund the LED lighting program, change out all of our lights, and then once that's completed, they will guarantee a generated savings of $3 to $3.5 million a year. Last year, we could have got our hands on about 60 to 65 million. This year, the number's less because of our current interest rate. So we've lost a few projects in the manner, but basically, they round up the money. We do 7 to 10 projects that are on this HVAC list, which are the ones that are most catastrophic, and we use that $3.5 million to pay the bank. That's how we fund it. The savings from the LED lighting pays our note. Basically, it's the simple version of it. Now, I'm not going to tell you that this is the be-all, end-all, and it's going to solve all our problems. Because 2 years ago, when we did this in 2021, they told us then we had a $250 million HVAC project problem over the next 10 years. Well, we're fixing to be 3 years later, and we've fixed one. We're in the process of fixing two with the reallocated $10 million that the county reallocated from one of our funds to this fund. Didn't give us anything extra. They gave us our own money, but they allowed us to use it for something different. So I'm able to take care of 2 additional projects this year. The problem is those projects were $4 million when we did this budget, and they're about $5.5 now. So I'm going to finish those projects with money from next year. You'll see these projects back on your list to be able to finish. And we did the same thing at Central Magnet. The same thing happened to us there. We ended up having to fund it over 2 years. So all I'm saying is, should we, further conversation, and this is something that I'm kind of my last ditch effort. I'm not going to bring it up here again. If we don't do something similar and find some money to be able to buy some more time, these projects are going to snowball. What happens is we show a project in year 2. If we don't do it, guess where it goes? It moves up a year. It's not going anywhere. It goes into year 1. Now I've got all of last year's plus the next year. They keep piling up, so the number gets larger. And they're not going away. Our problem is getting worse every day. And I'm not kind of like Mr. Young. We got to do something. We've been talking about it for a while. We've got to do something to get us on the wagon. There may be some more coming with a new funding source, but we won't know all that till we get it. We don't know what that is. So I say all that to say we started this in 21 with an RFP that this board allowed us to do. We did that in March. They started in February. They did their first report in July. And they're here tonight to give us about a 15-minute update on what the numbers look like now, with the hopes that there's some conversation amongst you guys and we can possibly consider taking some action. Other than that, I'm out of options for finding additional funding revenue to take care of the problem. Thank you.
Before they start, Trey, I will say thank you to you and our maintenance team, because with the weather that we had, we could have had a lot worse shape with our building, so you guys did a really nice job on that.
Thank you, yeah. And when we
Someone-
had the issue at, I'm sorry, Roy Waldron, by the time I got in the car and went over there, they were already there and fixing on, so.
As someone that deals with frozen pipes in those scenarios, it is not a fun time when things get to zero. So, yeah, definitely gratitude to them. My name's Jason Voles. I'm an engineer with CMTA Engineers. Andrew Collins here, also an engineer. We're working on 2 of the buildings that are going to be updated here at Rockvale and Stewartsboro in the next summer and the next coming year. But as Trey said, we're here tonight to talk about our refresh of an investment grade audit. And an investment grade audit is us coming in, looking at your energy use at every single different facility, and then looking at the facility condition at every different facility. And our focus when we're looking at facility condition is focused on the energy consuming device and energy consuming infrastructure. In this case, we're talking about HVAC lighting. So with that said, next slide. So, as he said, one of the reasons why people look at this is a financing tool to help districts, spread the gap, basically. So, currently, you guys spend almost $12 million annually on your utility bills. If we could just redirect some of that from going to your utility providers and into your buildings, we can help with the funding gap that he was just talking about. So that being said, generically, you've got a pie chart on the left there that looks at your bucket of money is going, you've got $12 million going to utility, and then a certain percentage going from your maintenance bucket. That bucket is the same before our project and after the project, but instead of us sending money to the utility providers or your maintenance providers, you're sending that into your buildings. So if we do our job right, the other component of this is we have a guarantee that you're going to have the performance that is contracted out, that we're going to get the savings that is there, and if we don't, then we write you all a check so that you can pay off the debt payment. If we don't meet, that's only if we don't meet the guarantee. If we do meet the guarantee and there's excess savings, those go back to you directly. Those don't come back to CMTA or any of the contractors involved. Next slide. So part of the investment grade audit is looking at all of the utility spend. So like I said, you guys spend $12 million across your utility, natural gas, and water, across about about 10 different utility providers, with the majority of that going to your electricity provider. So about $9.7 million is going to the 3 different electricity providers. Next slide. Another thing we're looking at is where all of that energy is going, and the way that we benchmark your energy use is looking at the amount of energy that goes into a building and divided it by the square footage. It allows us to compare elementary schools that are much smaller to high schools that are several 100,000 square feet. And when we look at your average, you're at a 63. The lower the number, the better. The average Tennessee school is about a 50. Our ESP renovations, after we're done with them, they're about a 29, and then our new construction is a 19. So a lot of opportunity for savings. Next slide. And when we're looking at your facilities across the board, we've got a wide range where you've got Rock Springs Elementary at the very bottom. That's your best performing facility, and Oakland Middle School. So you've got quite a few new facilities that are geothermal, LED. They're performing very well. And then you've got others that are above 100 or close to 100. Those are just big opportunities for savings.
Something I was going to point out for our board members. So we have 5 middle schools in the top 10. They all share the same design. And so that's just something to be aware of when you're looking at those top 3, and even going down to Rock Springs Middle and Siegel Middle School. They're all the same design. We have. That's not the design we use anymore. So it's gone.
I do want to provide Trey and your all's leadership some credit in going down the geothermal path about 10 years ago. All your new designs are the efficient designs that are going through, that are available. So, that's credit to all the new designs. Next slide. So this is the opportunity that we see in front of you. All of the green is the savings opportunity at each of these schools. So some of them have more opportunity than others, but there is a savings opportunity at every one of these schools. And what that means, next slide, is about $3 million, like he said, between $3 and $3.5 million of funding opportunity. Next slide. So that's the energy saving side of things. We also look at your facility plan, and we go through each one of your facilities and identify the HVAC system and where it's at in its age. And the way that we do that is we look at the heating system, the units that are in the room, and the cooling system all independently. And we look at the items that are coming up on the end of life, the items that are past their useful life, and the items that need immediate replacement. And you can kind of see the color-coded chart that's going on there. So you've got a mixture of things that are at their end of their life right now, but you've got a big swath that is coming up in the next 5 to 10 years that is going to need replaced. And like Trey said, there's a significant investment required to go after those, and that's between $150 and $180 million over the next 5 years. So we looked at a few different options. In general, it's going to require about 3 to 3.5 system replacements per year to stay in front of the snowball before it gets built. And next slide. The way that kind of plays out is we looked at when that critical system would need to be replaced so that you would stay ahead of this. And you can kind of see here we're in 2023. You've got a handful of buildings that need either a full replacement. You'll see some partial numbers in there. You've got a lot of additions here, and that means that portions of the building need replaced while other portions are in good shape. But if you don't do what's in 2023, those are just going to move to 2024, and likewise, where the snowball gets bigger and bigger.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So on this particular slide in 2023, it says Smyrna High School 0.3, so is that 30% of the HVAC units need to be replaced?
Smyrna High School. That means that, yeah, that there's about 30% of the high school. You guys just did some work at Smyrna High School where they got some ventilation air, but you didn't go after the entire system, so we're just saying that there's about 30% of that still needs work on it, and then would follow up in consecutive years. There's some more work that would need to be done at Smyrna High School as well.
Ask you another question real quick on that as well. I mean, of course, when you use the benchmarking for the Rutherford baseline utility spend, this is a couple slides back, but it says from 1/2018 to 12/2020. The numbers here on the Rutherford County Schools baseline energy usage, like the all orange, what was the time period for those?
Same period.
Same period, so it's 3-year average.
It's a 3-year average, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
When you're marking when these schools are gonna be done, I guess how you came up with that, because I'm noticing some of them that are in all green are slated to be done before some that are in the red.
Yeah, so we're looking at the age of the equipment at each, and it's not as straightforward as it can be because of all of the additions that happen across. So a system that we got that shows it's green might have a small section of the building that still needs renovated because it had an addition that was 20 years old. We're trying to make sure that everything inside of that building isn't getting something that's got 30-year-old equipment in it. So we are using, that might not answer your question directly, but basically we're going building by building and saying, when is the equipment going to reach the end of its life? And each system type has different length of equipment. You might have one building that has the top of the line equipment. It's going to last 30 years, where you've got another building that might have cheaper equipment that would only last 18 years. So we're looking at each system type and putting a schedule on when that system type needs replaced and putting it on the slide that's up on the screen right there.
Because I'll just tell you which ones. On the previous slide, Holloway High School is green all the way across all 3 bars.
Okay.
But it's slated to be done like before Thurman Francis, which has 1 yellow and 2 red bars. Basically saying that system is already at or past its useful life. But it's slated to not be done until 2024
Okay, I'm gonna try and answer this for him.
Yeah.
This is the same thing that I do every year. I've got 5 bad systems. I gotta pick the worst of the 5. And even though it's green, it's saying it's okay, it's operating okay. But it's not necessarily okay.
Wouldn't that be in the yellow category then?
It just depends. I have to put things that are green ahead of yellow because of cost. So it's not as simple as green, yellow, red. Red, the indicator for that is the equipment is beyond, I can't get parts for it. Still functioning, but I can't get parts.
Some of the newer equipment isn't lasting. Like some of the
Well,
I'm really shocked to see Siegel High School on here. School is not that old. I understand the McFadden's, the Holloways, the Riverdale's, the Oaklands, I totally get it.
some of the equipment that was utilized was not the top grade equipment. When those older schools were built, they used the top grade equipment. Same thing at Blackman High. We have a brand new school, but it was not built with the top grade equipment. Now, it doesn't mean you have to always buy the top grade equipment. We analyze things, and sometimes there's not a big difference between the top and the bottom. But if you always choose the bottom of everything across a whole system, sometimes you can take a part of a system and save money by utilizing not a Cadillac. You can get by with the Impala. But the overall system is still a Cadillac. It depends on where you use those parts.
So I have a question. So in regards to the parts and all that good stuff, so I understand that because I used to work with cars in the salvage business and using aftermarket parts and things of that nature, so it's kind of the same thinking there. But as in regards to standard, what's the standard when we're building a new high school, a new elementary school, a new middle school? Well, how do we decide what type of equipment we're going to use, whether we're going to go with top grade or a mixture of both?
That's my job.
I understand that. That's what I'm asking.
We analyze that equipment, we utilize our engineers, and we do the best overall average. We have chosen to go geothermal as a district. We made that decision 10 years ago. When we did that, it simplified our equipment. It reduced the number of pieces and parts. Instead of moving fluid or water through a bunch of different things, we basically have a series of pumps. That's it. Now, I'm being very simple. We're taking that water and we're sending it down in the ground and we're bringing it back up. It's a pump. All it's doing is moving water. Now, it's a simplified version of some more intricate systems. We have 4-pipe systems now with cooling towers and chillers, and we don't have all that anymore. We get away from that with geothermal. In places where we can't use geothermal, or where we don't have the property now on an existing building for geothermal, we're doing the best that we can. We're not necessarily specifying the Cadillac, but I'm not buying the Yugo either. Right. We're trying to pick and choose those components to give us the best balance of energy efficiency and longevity.
So in a new school, what will be the lifespan cycle of the balance that we're using?
It should be longer because we don't have as many parts.
Yeah,
We're utilizing geothermal.
On the geo side, the most expensive component in, let's just say Blackman High School, is the chiller and the boilers. Those are together more than $1 million. The big component for that is now in the ground. It's got a 50-year span.
Not a very long span, actually. I mean, it sounds like it's a long time, but 15 years, well...
50.
Well, 50. Oh, I thought you said 15.
No,
I was
50.
like, wow.
So the,
50. Okay.
whereas
That's
the
a little
chiller
bit
and the boiler have a 15-year. So
Oh, okay.
you guys
I
are
thought
putting...
you said 15.
Oh,
I honestly thought you said that. I was...
When we go back in and we, like you did at Central Magnet, I should have asked this question, but, and when you do, Riverdale, Oakland, some of the older schools, I'm sorry, I thought y'all couldn't hear me.
No, well, I'm gonna go back to it depends, which is the answer you all don't like. If we have the property, it is an option, but here's what you gotta understand. It's gonna throw another $1 to $1.5 million in the equation. Now, we're gonna get our money back in 8 to 10 years. So, I would say it would,
I'll add to that, because I got another slide for this.
okay,
Can we go a few slides ahead? So we're gonna come back to this, but there is a new funding stream that can afford us. Keep on going, sorry.
well, this is where I was going. Let me, it would have added $1 million to $2 million to our cost. Okay? I'm not opposed to adding that cost because I know we're going to get our money back, and in the long run, it's the best way to go. The problem is I got to have more money. So I've been sitting over here for the last 4 years going, do I add that $1 million to Rockvale Elementary because I've got ground to put it on, the geothermal, which is another $1.5 million to $2 million bucks, or because I've got this system over here that's dying, collapsing, I've got to have that $1.5 million so I can do 2 projects. Do you understand my dilemma? I would put that money there. Now, the feds have come out with a great new program this year as part of the whatever you want to call the latest, greatest, whatever they're doing now. But what this is going to do is
There may be, yeah.
we're going to have to fund it, which means I've still got to utilize our dollars. But once it's finished, these guys certify it and they'll pay us back the $1.5 million for the wells that we put in the ground. In theory, I've got Dr. Gullion looking into this to see if he agrees with this is really what it's going to do. But if that's the case and we can get our money back, then y'all got to pay up front. We have to pay. So if I've got $10 million, and I'm just using that as a number, and I've got 2 projects that are $4 million, and I can do one of them, I can add another $1.5 million, I've got to tie up that $1.5 million till we can finish the project and get the refund from the federal government. You follow? Therein lies the dilemma that I would be in going forward. The dilemma we've had in the past is I've got X amount of dollars, and I've got to be Solomon and the baby, and I've got to spread it around and get as much done with that money as I can. So it's not always as simple as I've been trying to get us to the middle of the road, good, that magical balance of energy consumption and equipment longevity. And every building is different because every building we have has something different in it. This is the other problem. You take Oakland, Riverdale, Smyrna, any of these schools that have been added on to Laverne, that's been added on 4 or 5 times, every flipping section has got a different HVAC system.
And different manufacturers. And we know
Different
that
manufacturers,
are not
different
doing
times, and
anything
different
right.
stuff. They've done whatever, and I hate to use the term cheapest, but in certain sections they did whatever was cheapest, and it's not conducive with the other 2 sections, which makes the renovation that much more difficult.
Right, and that goes back to my question of when we're building new schools, what are the standards? So that
And I
we
just
don't
told you.
fall into that.
I just told you, the standards are geothermal with the best balance of energy efficiency and longevity. That is the standard.
Okay.
Now, I can tell you this much, the last 4, 5, 6 schools, it's been train equipment, and it has been, I couldn't tell you the name of the pumps, it's changed a little bit, but it's been train equipment and, I've got 2 different outdoor air systems. Aeon and the other one. But we get multiple bids. What you don't want is to lock yourself into one piece of equipment where that manufacturer can jack the numbers up. But it's a balance.
Yeah, and this master plan is great. We've identified 39 facilities in the next 10 years, but then after 2027, are we keeping track of what we're doing today? So after year 2028, we identify the ones, because that number is going to change, facilities are going to change, to know what other facilities that we need to.
The intent for this is, it's an ongoing and whoever comes after me continues this process.
Right.
That's what we did not have before.
Yeah.
We did not have this process.
Right, and so we're gonna keep this process in place, documented somewhere.
As long
if
as
you
I'm here,
really-
you'll see it every year.
Someone comes in and takes hold and knows what's
Yes,
been
they,
happening.
they will not have to go through what we've had to go through. We have, this was not done in the past.
And I appreciate you trying to get us
And
back to.
this is what needs to continue to
Right.
go forward, so that there's a 3 to 5 year plan, and we reanalyze every year. One that I have out there at year 3, I may have to look at this one and go, okay, I thought this one was, it's 2 years newer and it should last longer. It's not necessarily gonna do it, so I'm gonna swap the two. And we've done that.
It'll connect to when we're building our new schools. So having worked in 2 different districts gives me a different perspective. What we are doing is somewhat middle of the road. We aren't doing in our new schools like the columns that you'll see, the big, huge white columns like our neighboring school district does, but we're also, they're not giving us 15% of their money like we do. But the other portion of that is that we put in auditorium. I'll use an auditorium as an example. Trey and I had this conversation. We put in an auditorium at our middle schools, and it's part of the additions. I was blown away that I was getting an auditorium that had wiring, that had a sound system, that had a PA system connected to it. Because in my previous district, a school had to fundraise to have a PA system connected to it. So we aren't top of the line like some school systems could be. But I feel confident we do a good job of being where we need to be in the middle.
There's a lot of this. It's not, and I'll hush, but there's conversations that we're gonna have internally about going forward. Now, use auditoriums as an example. Are we a middle-of-the-road, top-end school district for arts? Is that the board's intent? That's what we have been. That's what we provide in our auditoriums for middle school and high school. Now, do you want to be a private school theater system? Is that what you want to be? If that's the case, I need about another $3 million per auditorium to upgrade the sound and the lighting. Or do you want to step up and be a small scale, small college at about 5 or 6 million? Do I want to be a small MTSU as a district-wide? You see where I'm going? I mean, we can continue to go up. It doesn't necessarily, from a facility standpoint, give us that much bang for our buck. I'm trying to keep us in that sweet spot.
Yeah, balancing both sides.
Yes.
Plus, we have older schools and we continue to grow.
Yes.
And our budget only allows for bare bones, so there we go.
And
Hey, what about this John Coleman deal here? Is that the old school, the reason that's on the list?
yes, sir.
Okay.
And we've started part of that process this year. It's about a $3.5 million process. We had $750,000 budgeted to a building that we weren't going to utilize anymore, and now we are. So that system had been let go to the point that it was obsolete. It's gone. So now I've got to do a major gut remodel of that whole system. It's going to take 2 years. We're going to get it started this year for the $750,000 that's in our budget. And then going forward, there'll be another $3.5 million that'll be required that'll be able to finish it next year.
So we're gonna tie it into the geothermals on the new
No, sir, it's not designed that way because the new system is only designed for that particular building. There's not enough space on the campus to get up the wells that we need for the old building. If we had thought that we were going to keep this building in operation, we probably could have designed that system to where the wells would have taken care of it.
This building was supposed to be used for storage, and it was not supposed to be used for students.
I'm not,
And it
and that's why it's not able to be tied in. It was supposed to be torn down or used for a storage building, and now we've got It's full.
We should have tore it down, it seems like. But
And we got new schools, kids in storage.
You're all right. We will quickly touch on the Inflation Reduction Act, and then we're going to touch on a few different project options. So quickly, Inflation Reduction Act, signed in August of last year, will become fully active in February of this year. It affords a non-tax-paying entity, such as yourself, state government, local government, that can get a tax credit now. Basically, you all don't pay taxes, but you can get a tax credit back for up to 40% or even 50% if you're in the right geographic location. You guys aren't in one of these existing energy communities, but 40% of the install cost would come back to the district. As Trey said, it's not an upfront payment to you all, though, so you still have to find the funds for it, and it, as far as we can tell, will come back to you in about year 2. So we've got a graphic here that kind of explains what's going on there. So like we've all been talking about, there's a premium to go with the high-end system. That would be the green line here. The green line is about $1.5 to $2 million more than the traditional system, and over the lifespan, though, that green line would become the cheaper option. This just makes that green line become cheaper quicker. And this program will run through 2032, so you've got some time to, unless something changes, but that's how it's written currently. Let's go back a few slides.
In this program, if we use it once, can we go back and use
Yes.
it again and
Yes.
again and again,
Yes.
up till 2032?
There are some caveats there. You
Okay.
can't do it on every building. You can't go back to it. There are a lot of more details on that, probably longer, but on a specific building, you can use it once. Next slide. So over time, this is a little bit about what Trey was saying. We've got about anywhere between $150 million to $180 million over the next 5 years that would be required on the HVAC systems. And if nothing was done, you'd have $165 million in deferred maintenance. You have a current plan that puts together about $50 million at $10 million a year. And we've got a slice that is going to help out with this. I'm going to turn it to Andrew to talk through 3 different options. Next slide.
Yep, so we put together a few options really to show you the breadth and the depth of the opportunity. So that is to say, how many of the facilities across the school district could be upgraded, and how deep or extensive those upgrades would go. So the first option is what we would call like a low-hanging fruit option. So the things that are gimmies just make sense. It's going to pay for itself easily within a 15-year project. So this would include LED lighting across the entire district, both interior, exterior, and your sports facilities. In addition to that, there would be HVAC controls, retro commissioning, or just minor adjustments to the existing system that would be done. And this project would be $32 million. And in addition to that, the amount of savings that it would generate in this project would be over and above the cost of the upgrades, to the tune of about $5 million, which could be retained by the district itself or put towards an HVAC system upgrade.
That's included in the $32 million.
Yes, and that's included in the $32 million. Next slide. So building upon that, this project option is the same, includes all the same scope as in the previous one, but we've now added in some HVAC renovations. So as you can see there, we've added in HVAC renovations at Buchanan Elementary School and Daniel McKee Alternative School. In addition to that, there would be 5 partial renovations at the 5 sites listed there. Partial renovation would be upgrading boilers and chillers, but not an entire system. And that project, again, that would be self-funded, so entirely funded from savings at about $42 million. Next slide. Yep, so I guess the next question is, well, what is the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act investment tax credit on this? So the third project option here, we've moved from 2 HVAC renovations to 3 HVAC renovations if we were to utilize the tax credit towards the project cost. And in addition to that, you go from maybe your middle line HVAC renovation type to the premium. So now you're able to afford a Geo system at 2 of those renovation sites. And in addition to that, all of the other scope remains the same, and it is about a $50 million project. Next slide. Very, very briefly, the investment tax credit also has an effect on renewable energy. So you can get the same tax credit on a solar photovoltaic system. And so we evaluated this across 6 of the sites throughout the district, the 6 most opportunistic sites. Unfortunately, in Tennessee, the TVA does not value self-generation at most sites. They want to install solar themselves, and or at least I guess that's what they're trying to do there. So the paybacks are pretty long, anywhere between 26 and 28 years, which is within the life of a solar system. So the solar system is going to last 30 years, but it's not within the life of an ESPC project. So it's not going to be self-funding. There will be funds that are directed at those upgrades. But, next slide, if you include the opportunity with the tax credit, those paybacks come down fairly substantially to between 17 and 19 years, and it both provides cash flow within the life of the system and also within a potential ESPC term if you were to do a 20-year ESPC term. So, next slide. A typical Tennessee ESPC project is going to be 15 years. If you were to go to your neighboring district and they had done one, it probably would be 15 years. There's no reason that it has to be 15 years. That would be a decision made by you all. In other markets, so we're from Kentucky, Kentucky market is 20 years, typical. There are examples in Tennessee where others have done 20 years, and so we also have a 20-year option. Next slide. One more. So you can look at the 20-year project. I'm going to show you the one with the Inflation Reduction Act included. So if you were to have a 20-year project, utilize the opportunity with the tax credit, you go from 3 renovations to 5 renovations, and 4 of those renovations are not the standard level, they're the premium. So you get 4 Geo sites with this project option. And in addition to that, there's 1 more partial renovation that could be added.
With all that being said, we've presented you 4 different options. There's probably 30 different options that we could look through, so we'll work through that with Trey when the time is right. But next slide, please. But the impact is really the same. Your red line is if you did nothing. The blue line is your current plan. And then the 15-year option, we get you a little bit away there. And then the green option is the 20-year options, where we're getting you about halfway there over the next 5 years. So there's still a gap no matter what. We're not the panacea for you all. We're here just as a tool in your tool belt. We're not expecting that a big project to come out of this, meaning the whole district at once. But it is something that as projects come up, this could be a tool that can be used by Trey and the leadership here. Next slide. So this was your current scenario, and then if you went through the 20-year option and your current plan, which is the $10 million a year, next slide, this is the scenario that you get to. So we're still getting a lot of it to be green, but not quite everything at that point in time. So just an idea of what's coming. Next steps when it comes to an energy project. You've already put out a competitive RFP. You really, if you're interested in going down this path, we can work together on coming up with that scope is. We've put 4 options in front of you. Obviously, that you all might want to know a little bit more about this. Then we will design it, engineer it, put it out to bid with local contractors, and then come to execute a contract at the point in time. So this is your all's project. We're just here to facilitate it and help you get to where you can go. So sorry if we went over there, but there was some good conversation. So.
But I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so we got the competitive RFP, but then the project scope selection, what is the timeline on that to get to implementation phase?
It's been about 15 months of
That depends on y'all. But if we were to say go, and you were to pick one of those four, and I think there needs to be some dialogue between us on what, there again, how less expensive do we want to go? The most aggressive, which gets us the most, is the 20-year plan, and it's 80 million, and we do the GEO. I'm pushed the GEO 15 years ago when I started, and I'm gonna keep pushing it. It's, our utility bills show it. We're getting a 7 to 8 year payback. And after that, we're saving buku money. So I'm a proponent of the GEO. It's not the be-all, end-all. We're still gonna need the TISA money. We're still gonna need to fund things from the county side through the 177, I hope. But this is a way to fill in some of that gap and get us further down the road. If we said go today, we would probably be 12 to 14 months before the first job would start.
Wow.
And I say all that, it's just like the three projects that we got going right now, Smyrna, Oakland, and Riverdale. I'm sorry, guys, 6 to 7 months is design time. Then you've got to put it out for bid, you've got to get mobilized, and you've got to do the construction. And I don't care how you slice it, it's 12 to 14 months to just get your feet under you and get going. And we've been building elementary schools in 12 months. Those days are gone. Yep. The manpower's not there, the material shortage has got everybody. We're looking at 15 to 17 months now for an elementary. Wow. If we had something, if there is a good thing, these projects are more on the design time and the bid. The two projects that we've got going right now, Stewartsboro and Rockvale, we started them this past summer. You're not going to see anything happen till school's out, but we're going to do it all this summer.
So let me ask you this.
So when they come back, it'll be finished. So it's a 12-month cycle, but 9 months of that is the design, the bid, the drawings, and the whole 9 yards, and then we cram it all in 3 months.
So all those jobs get crammed in 3 months?
Yes.
So even it'll take the 12 to 14 months for the project scope?
Per project, per project, per project.
Oh, 3 to 5 months per project?
Per project. Now, that's not to say that we can't design 3 or 4 of them together at a time, just like we're designing 3 or 4 of these together at a time.
Got it.
The way this would work, the first thing that would happen is for this program is we would put out to bid the LED lighting package. That's the first thing. We change out all the lighting to LED, and in that time frame, we're doing the design for the HVAC for the other projects. Once that's finished, the LED's finished, we begin to save money, then those other projects are going to come along fairly quickly in 3 to 4 months after that takes place.
Okay, well, because this master plan has the spreadsheet starting out 2023, but if it takes 12 to 14 months, we're not going to start in 2023.
Yeah. This was put together 3 years ago.
Oh, got it, okay. So, but
Those dates are old.
oh, I thought this
We're
was
3 years behind.
I thought when you guys said update, I was thinking you.
No,
guys
we updated some of the cost
schedule.
figures. No, we just, that's the same. That's the same as 3 years ago.
But these.
I
are
don't
still-
know how to update it till you tell me where you want to go.
So let me, if I may, make a few suggestions to my fellow board members. If you have any further questions, please send them to Dr. Sullivan and let him forward those to you guys. Come Thursday night with a motion on what we want to do. We want to do the 10-year program. We want to do the 3.5-year program. Come ready to vote on a motion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so number 12, I'll have Thursday, because that'll give us a couple more days to see if anything else posts after the holidays before we do the budget forums. Excuse me. 13, insurance update. We are on our new insurance carrier. So Dr. Anthony, you got anything that you want to add to that?
Going smooth, everybody's getting their new cards, even if they made changes all the way up to December 31st, they're getting the revised cards. So, very easy transition period we've had.
I think you and I both sound like we need to go try our new insurance cards, but it's okay.
I was grateful that our emails had slowed to a stop, so
Yes, very
that,
much.
meant things were going very well.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your leadership, Dr. Anthony.
Just a couple things, director's update. So we have Budget Committee Thursday with County Commission. We don't have anything on their agenda. We didn't have anything for Health and Ed. We'll have a couple the next time. So we don't have anything on the agenda there. We have as I mentioned, we continue to work on our Board of Distinction. So part of that requirement for Board of Distinction is to have other board members who come and evaluate and critique our board. So we will have one on January 5th from Bedford County, and then we will have two on January 19th from Franklin Special, correct? That is part of their level 5 boardsmanship to go through and critique another board and some other things as well, so they will be here to critique that portion of it. In connecting to that, we do need to start having conversation about our 5-year building plan. That's something that we probably need to vote on, update, and knowing that we are going to, just like we do every single year, once we get the new rezoning thing, go through and have another option. County Commission likes to have that so they know what they're going to bond market for this year, even though we've told them they like to have that in that official document. So that was shared again with me again. I'll bring that up at our next January board meeting. Care Solace, I gave you this document just has a couple little graphs on it. So the board in the summer, previous board, approved us to work with Care Solace, and Care Solace is basically a third-party contract that we know that we are educators, even though we have school counselors. Our school counselors are not trained mental health professionals. They can provide counseling, but they're not going to provide the same type of counseling that a mental health provider is going to. And so this company acted kind of as that go-between, and you'll see that they had over 3,090 people contact them, whether those were parents, community members, teachers, school counselors, to say there was a need. You'll see that they conducted 17,220 either emails, phone calls, or something. And basically what they are doing is they are taking a student has an issue or a parent has an issue, and they then take that information and try to find them a provider. You'll see the family-initiated cases. We had 88 family members. So we did this as a communication home to our parents in our community. So in 6 months, and knowing some of the stigma that unfortunately comes around mental health, to have 88 families who have reached out for support through them, I think that's a very positive sign. We have 219 students or family members who have entered into care groups through this. And then we've had 485 searches. When you could go into Care Solace right now and say you're looking for a provider, and you could do that. These are the stats that as students or parents call in and say about their child, you'll just see it's pretty much an even split among children, adolescents, and adults. So you'll see that adults are using this fairly regularly as well. Again, it was a community type aspect, not just a school system. You'll see the racial background, and then as far as the insurance stuff. So just got this today. I thought it was interesting to share so that you could see as a board kind of what you were looking at. Couple quick things. So one thing that always is near and dear to my heart is to always talk about teacher contracts. So there's always this misnomer that teachers during breaks are paid just to sit at home. So anytime I get the opportunity to say that they are not, that is not what they are paid to do. So teachers are contracted 200 days. They are with students 180 of those. There are 5 discretionary days that we use, like as teacher work day, admin days. They have 5 in-service days, 4 of those we provide, and then they get 10 vacation days. Unlike in a regular place of employment where you get to choose your vacation days, our certified staff is told when their vacation days are. Their vacation days were December 19th through 23rd, and then their next ones are March 27th through 31st. So that means the other part of fall break, winter break, those are unpaid days. They're salaried, so they split their salary out amongst that. So I always like to bring that up in the public just to talk about teachers not being paid to sit at home those days, or either their vacation days or they're not paid for those days. They're just salary is split. Last thing is just we are starting the second semester, of course, today. Our employees started back today. We have really keeping it with our goals, just 4 quick focus items: protecting our learning environment, which talks about student behavior and just making sure that the learning environment is safe; standards-aligned instruction; recruitment and retention. That is a huge portion. Did we start posting today? We started posting for next year's positions today already to try to get ahead. and then making sure our budget is aligned to our strategic plan. So that is something that will help us as we present our budget to County Commission, Health and Ed, saying, here's the plan that we have approved as a district, now here's the funding we need to make it happen. So.
Okay, so we can do you want to do Thursday night? Okay. Any general discussion?
We're going over, if we had questions or anything about that, is that something we should be discussing this evening?
Or Thursday, they will technically go to policy committee again from here. Is that correct, Monica? Make sure I'm right on that. This one's strange because we're doing it like twice.
Yeah, excuse me. If you want to email me, we can also do that and just say, I'd like to put this policy on the January Policy Committee agenda, and I can put that one on there, and then we can take it up at that time.
Otherwise, it would strictly be like we would say, policy 3.202, are there any changes need to be made to policy 3.202? We hear none, that we move on. Very similar to what we just did on the same exact policies, it's just putting us in line again.
Ones to Monica that we have questions
Yeah,
on,
I think
that
it's
have
great.
to pull off of here if they're gonna get reviewed at that policy committee?
I think both are the same because these are going to go straight to the policy committee. Correct? Or am I wrong on that? So if the board has, so if we have policies that we know want to go from this list to the policy committee,
Right,
do we want to go ahead and email those as questions now?
yes.
Okay.
That'd be great. That way I can put them on the agenda.
So were they
So
put?
the reason why we're doing this annual review is that that's part of the Board of Distinction for TSBA. So we have to do this annually. And in the past, we did them on the policy committees, which if we have one every quarter, that would take a long time. So if we review them all during the board meetings, then we can get through the whole section in, 3 or 4 board meetings and have that checked off, that the board has reviewed all the policies. But if you see something that you want changed, please email me and then we'll put that on the next policy committee.
Off of Thursday and push to that policy committee meeting.
What about policies that you have requested? Do they show up on here or are they gonna show up on the committee meeting? I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Policies that are not technically, policies that are gonna be new policies implemented and they're not listed on the agenda, are they gonna be brought on committee on the day that we meet during the policy review committee then? Is that when they're gonna be introduced? Yes, if you have new ones that you would like to propose or anyone has new ones, just please email them to me and I'll put them on the agenda. Now, I do need them like a week or so before that January 31st date because I have to post the agenda and get it prepared.
And try to get with TSBA to see if they have any model policy that we can pull from first.
Okay, so we're not gonna see the full list today. We'll see the full list when we're actually gonna meet for the review, policy review committee.
It's normal. It's
Oh, okay.
how we normally do. We're seeing these up front because we're reviewing these.
Gotcha.
So if there's anything in here, pull it out and send it to Monica, Miss Ridley, excuse me.
Okay.
And then that'll be on that agenda.
Okay, great.
Great job summarizing that, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, on CMTA, I do have one question here. What is there's no recommended motion here, so are we looking to vote on this Thursday night?
So just, yes. So you need to.
What I wanted to do, I wasn't necessarily looking for a vote Thursday night. I wanted to bring this to you so that you could hear it again, get feedback, and then if there is either at the next board meeting, if there's a wish to move forward, we would have time to come up with that motion and I could put it on the, the 19th or whatever, motion. I wanted to bring it back before you tonight because we do have some new members, some of it's changed.
Right.
Have discussion tonight. Any questions Thursday night? Still have another week, that if you had a question, you can call me. I'll be glad to answer them and then try and craft some type of motion for how we would like to go forward for the next board meeting on the 19th. I wasn't necessarily looking for a motion this week. This was more for information to get back out there and then have discussion and bring forward a motion at the next meeting.
Okay, good, because I don't think we have enough information here yet to vote on this, so I'll agree with that.
Can I go back to the policy question just real quick? Because I had to go back and look at minutes. So our policy committee reviewed section 3. What we do not have is in our minutes for our November 8th meeting, we don't then have to where the board officially reviewed their policies and approved those policies that we didn't make any changes to. So that's why in the future it will be board first and then go to the policy committee. So that's why we literally are looking at these twice.
Just to clarify on that same point, I think that all the policies are going to be brought before the board to basically just look over, and then any changes that we'd like to be made, we can let Monica know. Okay. I had the same question, just want to clear.
I did too. I went right back to Monica
Yeah.
and I was like, I swear we've seen this
Yeah, we've
already
done this before.
So, yep, that was why.
So I have a question on the same thing with the energy efficient. So if we do want a motion and we're still discussing on Thursday, do we need to vote to have a motion be brought for the next meeting? No.
Well, based on tonight's discussion, my
Intention would be to propose a motion on the 19th.
And will that motion have options?
Now, it will be a specific option,
It will be a specific option?
yes.
Okay. Is
With
that
the
something
hopes
that,
that there's enough dialogue between us, between now and then, for me to have a feel for which way you would like to go.
Conversation.
okay. Because that, I think that would be great if we can talk about this further, so that you can get a sense of where we're gonna be at, so that we can have the motion that's specific for whatever the consensus is. I don't know
Kinda
what
I was
needs to be-
hoping the dialogue tonight would start.
Yeah, I just don't know what the next step will be, so that we can have that conversation, so we can move towards that.
I know one thing I have to do is I have to look at fiscal impact and see, even though that we would be taking potentially loans out to pay for this type of thing, I would like to talk to Knox County's Director of Schools. Memphis Shelby's in a transition, so Knox County is somebody that I've talked to several times to see kind of what they're doing with this, to get some guidance on that as well. And then I need to talk with Brian and look at funding as well.
Because this is not something that we're gonna go to the county to ask.
That we have tried that, and basically the county is at their borrowing capacity, which is why we can't get any more buildings right now, so it would be on us.
Right, exactly. We're gonna go out on our own and getting the loan. Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Anybody opposed to, Mr. Lee? Read.
On the Campbell appeal, which is the hearing on the dismissal of the tenured teacher, that is set for a hearing on January 31st following the policy meeting. So after we have policy committee meeting that night, we'll go and have the appeal hearing at that point. That comes to you on the record, so there's no new evidence presented. So each side gets about 15 minutes to make their arguments. Then the board would have to take some action that night. You'll get an agenda sent to you for a meeting like you would for any normal meeting, with your options. But there's a transcript that's been emailed to you of the hearing before the state officer, and we have a hard copy, which Monica is going to give to you tonight as well. It's a pretty lengthy copy, but we'll give that to you after the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reed. Appreciate that. Any further discussion? We are adjourned.